Welcome everybody to this new episode of the Women in Technology Spotlight. Today I have a special edition where I have two guests. I have with me Darya Bululukova, who is a cloud solution architect at Wien IT, and Ivana Ovcaric, who is Analytics Lead in Marketing Automation at A1 Telekom. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, happy to be here.
So, my first question usually is, tell me a little bit about yourself. And when I ask you that, I would like to know a little bit about your background, where you come from. Maybe you want to start, Darya.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Darya Bululukova, as already introduced. Thank you very much. I'm 30 years old, even though it doesn't feel like that. I originally come from Uzbekistan, which is in Middle Asia. It's a bit different, so it's fine if you don't know where Uzbekistan is. Most of people don't. When I was 17, I participated in a German language learning exchange program in Germany. That's how I came in touch with German culture, German language. And after 1 year, it was clear to me that I really enjoy the language. I would like to stay in this area, let's say like that. And then I moved to Austria to finish the high school. And I actually did. So then I went to the university in Vienna, finished the university with a master's degree and stayed in Vienna as well to work. And at this point, I moved away from Vienna to the outskirts of Vienna, so a little bit farther away, to be able to be near to the nature, to have a small house, to have a garden. So that's basically it. So I'm in Austria for already 10 years, I think even more. I also have the Austrian citizenship at this point, but yeah, I'm born in somewhere else and raised with a different culture.
Mm-hmm. That's already quite an interesting thing. And before I move to Ivana, I just have one quick question. So you were born and raised in Uzbekistan. So what triggered your interest in the German language?
So there is such thing as Goethe language school, I believe. Where they are active all over the world. And I went to a linguistic school. So I was learning English and German as a second language. And additionally, I was taking courses in this organization at Goethe Institute. And at this point, they were offering kind of school exchange programs. And one of those was of course, in Germany. And that's how I came in touch with it.
Okay, that's so cool. I grew up in Nigeria and there was also a Goethe Institute. So
really?
Yeah.
Connecting
so cool. Ivana, so what brought you to your current position?
Yeah, in short, that was a job. So I was born and raised in Belgrade in Serbia, and that's where I finished my faculty. That's where I started my career. That's where pretty much my whole life was until 4 years ago when I moved to Vienna. Differently to you two, I had zero knowledge of German, so it's still a bit of a pain getting there, but it's progressing slowly. And yeah, essentially, I started working in A1 in Serbia. I got a really nice opportunity to move to the headquarters of A1 in Vienna. And even though I really love Belgrade, there was something drawing me to see what else is there. I think there was some personal development that still needed to happen. And so my family is still back in Belgrade. I moved here, knowing I would be financially safe, but I had zero contacts or zero sort of backup net, which in hindsight is always a bit crazy of a move, but I haven't regretted it since.
That's an interesting thing to do, to move to a completely different country for a job, especially if you don't speak the language. How did you experience, coming to Vienna without speaking German? Was it a shock?
I cannot say it was a shock. I was preparing myself psychologically for this. There is also, a good and a bad thing, knowing that there is a lot of Serbian circulating in Vienna, which, it did help me in the beginning a lot, but sometimes has hindered my progress in learning the language, and also led me to, a bit of thinking about my identity in interesting terms. Maybe we can touch upon that later.
One quick question I already have to your background here. So you said you already worked for A1 in Serbia, obviously, and then they gave you this opportunity. You're quite young, so you must be really good at your job to be asked to take a job overseas, as you would say, or internationally, actually.
Yeah, that's I haven't thought about it in those terms at that time. But I think what is very interesting about the department where Darya and I have met, it's digital transformation department. And there I have a feeling age is less of a disadvantage factor. You're someone coming in fresh from faculty, you're someone who is following the trends, who is interested in up and coming things, and there is a lot of benefit that you can bring at that point. So I think that's why Darya and I we're successful in what we do. I don't know, Darya, if that's your experience.
Sure. Actually, I do think that the area we're working in is a bit more open towards different ages, because it's such a new topic, and let's say the technology itself is also still developing. It's kind of was not existing for 20, 30 years like other areas. It's up and coming, big data, data analysis, marketing based on data, and also cloud environment. Those are relatively new topics. And of course, it's hard to hire someone who has 30 years of experience in the topic we just started developing. So for us, of course, it's a huge plus. And as Ivana already mentioned, so for us in the digital transformation unit, it was kind of a welcoming culture to bring in, our new ideas. We have this motivation, of pushing for things or for developing our ideas. Yeah, it's a great area to work in right now.
It's an interesting point, actually, that digital transformation is a younger field, because that's what we're in this whole process where the world is going into this transformation step by step. Some areas are further along and some are just going into this digital age. So, but maybe you would like to explain a little bit what digital transformation in A1 actually is. Maybe Ivana, since you're still there.
Definitely. So A1 Group is a pretty big company. It's a telco operating company operating in 7 countries. And as with all the big systems, change sometimes can be painfully hard. There are legacy systems get built over years on top, they sometimes have trouble following up on all of the speed, or following up to the speed that the market is transforming in. So with all this new technology being produced, there are way more options to communicate with your customers, to do your operations internally, to unlock new business opportunities. And for us in A1, that's the idea is that our team follows what is happening in the market, kind of filters through all these new features and options, see what could work for us, and then help A1 in all these countries to implement that, to adapt to new ways of working, and essentially to leverage all this new technology.
Yes, while you were telling me this, I was thinking about the fact that A1 is actually one of those dinosaurs. So it came out of the old postal systems in Austria, and it's very true, even though it has gone through different relaunches, renamings, and there is this DNA in there. But it's also a thing that a lot of service providers have.
For me personally, it makes it super attractive, because you get to be this disruptor from within. You get to have this sort of a startup-y vibe inside of this, I'm going to say, slower pace culture.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I can actually see that. I can see that a company like A1 with its roots back in the K and K monarchy times would actually need something, a young business unit that is responsible of bringing that fresh air inside and having these new ideas to actually make it possible for them to move forward into to a new world, which is actually happening. So you both met at A1. Darya, how long ago did you leave there?
It's not that long, actually. It was last September that I left the company. Before that, I made a sabbatical of 3 months, sorry, just to have the time for me to gather what I would like to do, where I want to be, what is my next step. So, and after that, in September, I left for Wien IT, which is, as you already said, another dinosaur on the market. Maybe even more than A1. But to touch on what Ivana said, it's not only that we are the disruptors in this area in these companies. What I also really appreciate is the huge advantage that those companies are the ones who are working with the real life data. They have a huge amount of data. They're actually working in the field, and what they are doing. So what if you implement a project or a technology, the results are immediate. You see them, let's say we work with Wiener Stadtwerke or Wiener Linien, they implement the use case in a project, and I can actually see it as the usual, as someone who is living in Vienna, by going by bus or by going by tram, I can see the results of our work, which is amazing.
Have an example, for example, especially in Wiener Linien. Tell me about a project that...
So I don't work for Wiener Linien. It's just one of the subsidiaries of Wiener Stadtwerke, which is, a huge conglomerate of different subsidiaries. But we as Wien IT do support them in the area of IT. So we are an IT service provider for the internal subsidiaries of Wiener Stadtwerke. So what we do is, the use cases are very different. Starting with, like machine learning based on sensor data. So let's say some trams have sensors measuring when some parts are going to break. Mm-hmm. They might use this data to, predict when it's going to break next time, to provide this data to the operators. It's just one of the use case. Others are less fancy, just, supporting the ticketing shop with the reliable infrastructure, which is less fancy, I know, but still it's a huge, part of the business. And of course, it's important that it works smoothly.
It's actually a fun side info because infrastructure is very unsexy, and I work for a company who provides infrastructure. So, and nobody knows us. So VMware is one of the biggest software companies. We run in nearly every data center in Austria. But when you mention the name to someone who's not in IT directly, nobody knows us.
That's true. But for me, I know VMware. So
yeah, I would assume, because I'm actually aware that Wien IT runs some Kubernetes cluster of one of our solutions.
We do.
So but that's it. If you work in infrastructure and if you are the one behind the scenes supporting this digital applications and whatever people use every day, people still won't know what you're doing. So that's an interesting part. So it's cool to see someone who's actually in that field and also working behind the scenes to make our world run. So now that we talked a little bit about what you did, not a lot, actually, I would like to come back to that, but I would also like to try and understand what made you go into IT, which still is an area that is not the prime target for young women, actually, which is a sad thing and which we're trying to change at the moment. So Ivana, maybe you could tell me a little bit about what made you interested in going into IT and what was your route there?
Yeah, definitely. And thank you. This previous conversation of yours is a really good intro for my answer, because I am really different to both of you, I would say. I really thrive on seeing, what is seeing this connection between business and the customer really directly. So for me, I don't think I would be happy, doing the infrastructural work. And that's sort of where how my whole path was. So I was constantly somewhere between business and technology. In school, I was very, analytically inclined, very good at maths and physics, but this was never something which was super exciting to me, to be honest. I always saw it clearly, A plus B equals C, fine, but I was more thriving in this, psychology, sociology, and similar areas. But there was this huge expectation of me just because you can do a technical field, and of course economically it's usually more prosperous than other fields. I had like an overall, I think, societal pressure to go into something like that.
Okay.
And I was very, very naively, simplistically seeing all of my possibilities in technology. I was imagining myself, man, if I go into this, I would have to be, sitting in some sort of a dungeon, like kind of, so, I don't know, with burning some sort of a chip. And that was not an option for me. So in order to buy myself some time, I enrolled to the Faculty of Economics and realized shortly, this is kind of too vague for me. So I went into the most technical option of economics, which was statistics and business informatics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I got into predictive analytics, which is also, again, perfect fit of, data and some technical skills applied to very, very visible use cases. And when I started working in this field, that's where it clicked for me. Oh my God, there is so much of this technology and this data, which can be used for so many cool use cases.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back to study, to enroll to a master's, which is the most social field of technical studies, which was computing and social sciences, essentially all of the technologies and data models which can be used for, social fields, social good, and similar options. So that's how I am where I am right now. Again, working on, what can technology unlock for us and for customers.
Mm-hmm. I think this is the first time that I ever heard a woman say she was pressured to go into a technology role. But it does make sense, actually, because I do see that if you have the talent for certain things, people have expectations. If they see you're good at certain things, they have a certain expectations what you will do later. So there's a certain peer pressure to use your talents, which is a whole other discussion, whether that makes sense or not. But yeah, that's really interesting that you say you were pressured to use that.
I wanted to say maybe that also relates to the fact that I had sort of an untypical closest environment. All of my family includes both male and female parts of it are in civil engineering. So
okay.
My mom is someone who is a technical person, so I essentially didn't know anything else. That's what was embedded in me.
Mm. That reminds me of something. Do you also have the impression that in the previously Eastern countries, like there are more women in technical roles, or used to be, so that there's a more even distribution, and that there's more, how to say, cultural acceptance of women doing stuff with technology and IT?
I mean, I will answer with just an observation that until I moved to Vienna, I didn't even have this gender division even in my mind, because our CTO was a woman. There were many women sort of role models in this area, which kind of trivialized the fact that they were women for me. They were just, people doing good work in this area. So to be honest, I never had this in my head until I moved here. And then I started looking into the numbers and actually, noticing there is a gap in here which was not visible. At least I cannot say generally for Serbia as a whole, but comparing A1 in Serbia and And in Austria, I do definitely see some difference.
Okay, thank you for that. I made some similar experiences when I was working for Riverbed years ago. I was also responsible for some of the Eastern countries. I went to Belgrade, for example, and Sarajevo and places like that. And and before I took on that role, people was telling me, oh, you want to do that in the Eastern countries? Aren't you afraid that the men will not accept you? And I had no such experience at all. So yeah, this just kind of clicks with my impression, with the impression I had. So moving to Darya, what was your path into IT? What made you interested in the digital journey?
Yeah, like I would really like to tell you some exciting story that I was always, interested in technology and was doing, technology stuff when I was a kid, but it's less fancy. So my family, from my family, no one actually has an IT background. When I moved to Austria and finished the high school, there was no such an idea in my mind to go to IT. Like I was quite good in, natural sciences, chemistry, physics. It was kind of easier for me to study them, but there was no such an idea, oh, I want to be a cloud architect. I think at this point, there was no such a job on the market. Like cloud was not the theme. But like what actually made me to do the last decision to actually study IT was the fact that my parents were still supporting me at this point after high school. And like I was talking to them, I was really into art history and sociology at this point. And I told them, like, I would like to study in this field. And they told me quite honestly, like, it might be hard for you to find a job after studying sociology. And that kind of helped me, to look into other fields. And IT was one of them because I knew, okay, I will most surely find a job. It doesn't matter in which area of IT, but it's a huge field. I will for sure find a job after the education. And I also studied at the Fachhochschule, which is not the university, but, more of the hands-on side of the education. And I knew like after 3 years, I will be done with my bachelor's. It was also a huge factor that I would be able, to find a job after 3 years and start working. Mm-hmm. So not as fancy as others, but it's, very pragmatic, down to earth solution.
Actually, I love this story very much because that's one of these misconceptions that a lot of people have, that when you want to go into IT, you have to have had an interest from basically being a toddler. You started taking stuff apart and then you had your first computer. But no, you can be a completely normal person who had different interests like yours, art and sociology. Wow,
exactly.
Word, actually, and still be successful in IT. So I'm very thankful for that story because it's, because I that's what I try to explain to people. I also try to explain to women, you don't have to be, you don't have to have this history with computers and IT and whatever. You can just have an interest, and passion and interest are much more important for what you're doing at the moment than having, there's a very interesting, we're at a very interesting point at the moment. So we are in IT, but a lot of people who are in IT have been there for 30 years. And the tools and the technology have changed. So all these history they have with systems and all the knowledge they have gathered is not necessarily relevant for what we're trying to do today, So it's actually much more relevant if you go into IT now and learn what's important now and then go on this journey. So there's no need to feel bad about your normal journey. I actually like it a lot.
Thank you. No, I was putting a lot of pressure on myself in this area, expecting, like seeing what is expected of women who are in the technology, to have this passion, to have this amazing story. I always dreamed of being, a IT technologist or a computer scientist or whatever, but like right now, I realize it's just a skill and a job as everything else. If you put enough energy and time into it, you will learn it. Of course, it's a huge plus if it's a passion, but not everyone has a passion figured out by the time they are 18. It's fine to start learning. If you enjoy the field, it's also fine, but it's a job and it's a skill and you can learn it. It's nothing like you don't have to be genius born with the IT gene. There is nothing like that, I guess.
It's very true. And I have been recommending people to read Angela Duckworth's book, Grit, for a long time, because since I read it a couple of years ago, because I feel we have an overemphasis on talent in our society. And what we underestimate is that the fact if you apply yourself and you learn something, you can actually be much more successful than someone who's talented. I mean, it always helps to have talent and work, but we tend to overemphasize talent.
Yeah,
Yes.
if I may add, it's also from Darya's talk, what is quite interesting for me and what I wish I would have had at the moment when I was deciding what to study, because that was such a huge pressure hovering over my head, is, it's okay not having it figured out. And also there is like a range, as you said, like, there are different topics within IT. You didn't think I will be, a cloud architect, but it's not just this one thing, this one idea that we attach who I have to be and how I will have to work. And especially today with technology changing so fast, there is such a wide range of things that you can do. They can be, closer to business, less close. You can work with people, you can work on your own. You will for sure find something which feels good and where you feel like, you are fulfilling that sort of spark or passion, or however you want to say it. But you don't have to be a fit to this idea on, how this looks like and how you have to look like to do this.
Yeah. And also in terms of passion, I mean, if you are on the outside looking in, you often don't know all the details of what is possible. So it might be that you start with something you're basically good at, you invest some work, and then you find a passion within that. So nobody knows where this whole digital world is going and what kind of things will be possible to do. So I've talked with so many women now, and everyone's doing something completely different. So there might be something in that field that triggers your passion, because your passion might not be definitely about specific technology, but maybe in the way it's used or in the way it's designed or whatever, there's so many options. Yes. So we talked a little bit about how you came into IT, where you came from. There's one thing I think we should still talk about a little, is what you actually do, just to give people an idea of your role. And I would like to start with Darya, because she is a cloud solution architect, which is so vague for people.
Wow, thanks. No, I'm not offended.
I know what you do, but if cloud is already vague.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that's true. It's absolutely true. So, yeah, kind of connecting to what Ivana previously said, I was not planning to become a cloud solution architect. Mm-hmm. I started to work in the area of data engineering, DevOps. Mm-hmm. And starting from there, I kind of migrated more towards infrastructure, because before we could analyze the data, before we could do all the fancy machine learning stuff, which everyone is so crazy about right now, you need a platform, you need an infrastructure where you can run it. So you need a reliable infrastructure. And this is how I got in touch with this whole topic. Within A1, while I was at my previous job, we were building exactly that. We were building a platform for marketing campaigns. We were building a platform for analyzing customer data to be better, to be able to create new connections in the data we have, which was not possible before that. Mm-hmm. And when you start, analyzing these big amounts of data, you realize very fast that on-prem infrastructure, so something which is, already existent in the company as a physical server, is not enough. So you will kind of reach the boundaries of what is possible. And this is how you start to think, okay, maybe cloud might be a solution for us. This is how I got in touch in the first place with the cloud. So we started evaluating how cloud might support us in building this platform for the data analysis. and we continue and so on. And I was involved into all of the topics along the line. So starting with what do I need to analyze the data? What kind of infrastructure do I need to analyze the data? To the next step of, building this infrastructure, installing the servers, installing the tools you might need, and then, making it replicable. So you don't want to every time do it manually. You would like to make it reproducible as possible. And we were working with our subsidiaries, as Ivana already mentioned. So we didn't have only one A1 company. There are subsidiaries in Eastern Europe. So we wanted to write it as a code so they can deploy it at their choice of in their cloud as well. So they have the same infrastructure. And then the data scientists or data analysts could reuse the models they are building in Austria, for example, in Serbia as well, or in Bulgaria as well. Mm-hmm. So that's basically how I got to the cloud. And I kind of got interested so much in all aspects of the cloud that I decided, I would like to deepen my knowledge. And basically what the cloud solution architect does is specifying how the solution should look like, starting from, the application, going deeper into the infrastructure. So what is the underlying level of the infrastructure? If I have the infrastructure, what kind of security do I like to have? What kind of data protection I would like to have? What is the networking solution? How I get the data from, on-premises inside? So the cloud solution architect is someone who is having all the small pieces in the head and bringing them together into one solution.
It's actually quite a complex field, right? We have all these big hyperscalers who have different features. So if you go to the Google Cloud or if you Azure or AWS, it's all a little bit different. And then you have your on-prem infrastructure and you have to connect the whole thing. And then you have to use that networking, security, all these topics are involved there. So it's actually quite interesting, right?
I love it. I love working with all of the, you have a networking team and they have their own pains, and then you have security team and they have their own pains and rules they have to follow. And you sit in the middle and you kind of have to get along with everyone because you are interested in delivering the solution. So they represent their own view, but you have to fight for them to find the middle ground. So this is, I kind of enjoy this point.
Yes. So Ivana, you are one of the teams who would use a platform that Darya's team built, right? Maybe you would like to explain a little bit what you do with that infrastructure?
Yeah, exactly. So one part of it is using the data that Darya is so kindly providing. And the other part of it is, how do we get this data from the outside into the company, and how do we use it? What are the use cases which we will deliver with this? So what does that mean very practically? On an example is, there are every website that we browse, cookies are being collected. How do we enable cookie collection? How do we segment this data that we collect, and how do we react upon it in real time? So there are many super cool tools that do this. And, I would research this, find what would potentially be a good fit for us. We would then, once we have it, we would think how to integrate it the best, and how to provide the better customer experience based on all this new technology that we put in. It's very simple.
Very simple. So I'm still trying to understand what the value is of all that data that you're collecting. So A1 is a service provider. So you collect data from the users, I assume, to build new products, or what can I imagine?
Yes, so one stream is definitely that. So, what do we learn about how our products are being used and how they're functioning to improve them and to provide us a better customer experience? On the other hand, there is a lot of data which can be used for personalizing customer communication and removing the spam messages that you're receiving constantly. So one example that Darya mentioned in Wien IT is, predictive and prescriptive analysis. So understanding that someone might be experiencing some network issues, you can be proactive as much as you can in reaching out to the customer and offering a solution. One part is, in customer service, one part is also in marketing, saying, hey, we don't want to spam you with all of the offers that we have. Here is something cool that you might be interested in based on how you've been using our products up to now.
Okay, that makes sense. So we have already spent quite some time together, and I have to come to an end of the hour. But before we wind this up, I have a couple of questions. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but how did you two experience, the transition to Austria? I don't know if that's a topic you want to talk to, how it is for you as young women from other countries living in Austria and working in IT. Maybe that's something you want to touch on. And then maybe you would like to say a few words of what you would recommend to other young women interested in doing what you are doing. So maybe we start again with Darya.
Sure. No, I'm fine. I can, of course, talk about how it was to move to Austria as a young woman. So I would differentiate between moving to the countryside, because initially I moved to the Lower Austria, which was a small village. This was a bit, let's say it was harder for me than living in a bigger city, because people there are not so used having someone from the outside, someone from the different country. But younger people in general are much more tolerant towards new cultures, towards new people. It was a bit challenging in the beginning, especially since I moved from Germany, where I was speaking, high German, German, and I moved to Austria, to the countryside, where people were talking in dialect, which I didn't understand at the beginning, at all. But then once I moved to Vienna, that was a whole different story. Honestly, Vienna is such an international city. You don't think about it anymore. There are so many different cultures, people from Eastern Europe, from Spain, from wherever. Vienna is the melting pot of cultures. So that was no problem at all. Talking about women in IT, it's also a bit of a different story because, of course, you do have the prejudice towards younger female IT colleagues as I am, because probably there are not so many of them and it's not something very usual. So the first reaction from especially older colleagues who are, working for 30 years in IT would be, oh, what do you know? What experience do we have? I have been working in this area for 30 years. What do you want to tell me? But honestly, once they realize that you actually have something valuable to share, they see that you're passionate about it or that you have the skill, you would really like to help them to work better or to create the better solutions, they open up. The situation changes. So I wouldn't lie and say, everything is super fine and everyone is acceptable and open about, having younger colleagues, female IT colleagues. But once you have to prove yourself, but once you kind of made this step and you go over this hurdle, it gets better. It gets better and you become accepted.
Okay, is there, or maybe let's table that for afterwards. Ivana, what is your experience with this?
I have to agree with Darya's conclusion. So I think there is something in us which makes our brain jump to conclusions. And we all have it within us. I think our brain is programmed to optimize. We do this, and it's on us to correct ourselves. So there is a initial gap, which I'm not sure it's always intersectional, right? You're young, you are foreign, you are in IT. There are many different things or reasons why someone might not take you seriously. But not taking it personally, but thinking, okay, this is how we function as human beings. I can work through this. If you have something to say, go ahead and say it. And then I also felt that sort of a wall breaks down relatively quickly. So there is something there, but I think it does end up going away, at least in my experience. And moving here, I gotta say, also a very international environment in Vienna. I think for me it was quite good to me. I think I had some internal things that I had to work through in relation to how sometimes Eastern Europeans are being stereotypically viewed in Vienna, and I was kind of afraid in a lot of interactions that is not attributed to me. So even more so to distance myself from that, which is also a very energy draining process, right? You're not free to act based on your will, but you're carrying the burden of this whole, I don't know, national or cultural identity. So that's something I gotta say, which kind of drained me in a few moments, and something that I'm still working on. And I think it's something that really is worth looking into, each one of us for ourselves.
I think that's a very valuable point you made there. Actually, more than one, really. One is the fact that we have to learn to understand that a lot of things have nothing to do with us, and just maybe leave them aside and move forward and just give the other person a chance to also work through their issues with whatever they're thinking. And then we usually see that it works quite well. And then there's the weight of we carry with us, because we are kind of like a representative of different things, maybe a foreign country, maybe of being a woman, and we have all these things that we try not to be a stereotypical whatever, and that is a burden, and learning to put that aside and being yourself is a progress, I think. Yeah.
There's a really good book on it, which I would recommend. It's called Whistling Vivaldi. And essentially, it's a professor who analyzed the effects of carrying this burden of a whole group on ourselves. It's actually scientifically proven how it diminishes our performance. Even when we just have the idea, someone might judge us based on this criteria, which kind of ends up perpetuating a stereotype.
Yeah.
And then it's a really nice message in the end, make sure not to continue this for others, be completely open, don't have ideas. Hard to say, but
thank you for that. I will definitely look into that book. I love reading, so that's something I do. And I've gotten a lot of great recommendations from a lot of women I've talked to, so thank you.
It would be cool to see the list.
Yeah. Adela Mehic is also compiling one. I gave her some recommendations as well, but I can definitely send you a list of stuff I have been reading recently and I've been recommended.
Cool.
So maybe as a final round, let's go through what we or you would recommend to a young woman starting out in the field. What maybe just, I don't know, a tip you would give, something she could do to make the journey easier. And Darya, let's start with you.
Okay, so I was thinking about this question, what I would give as an advice to younger me if I would have to start over again. But there is no like one piece of advice to follow, like a truth or like top 5. It's just a general an attitude maybe. Don't get discouraged. There is no, this, as Ivana already was talking about, there is no this perfect one job in IT. Just try things out. And from my experience, I developed within my field by learning new stuff on the job. I started as a data analyst and ended as a cloud architect. I was not even aware of the field before I started working there. Just try things out. No job fair, no job description can give you an impression of how the job would actually be before you actually try it out. And another thing, which I kind of see in my female colleagues the most, they ask themselves too much if they did something wrong, is something wrong with them. And I don't think that the male colleagues are asking these questions themselves too often. So if you get offered an opportunity, don't start to overanalyze yourself that you are unprepared. Just try things out. Not everyone has figured it out. Most of us are just trying things and see how it works out and see how it plays out and learn, on the journey. Maybe this is something I would like to give a younger self as an advice as well. Just do it. Don't ask to, don't doubt yourself too much.
Very good advice, I think, the overanalyzing, the thinking that you might not be good enough. And
exactly.
Thank you for that. Ivana, some last words?
Yeah, but after the touchdown that Darya made, I feel like everything would be obsolete. But I think a very well point made is that, a big secret is that no one is ever ready, right? You can say it, you can hide it, whatever it is, you will never be 120% ready for something. If you are, then you're over it already. You shouldn't do it. So, go into it, and you're allowed to change, to make mistakes, to learn based on it. It's not just you.
Yeah. Yes, thank you both. Thank you for these last words. Very important points, really, that none of us is ever finished learning. Everyone makes mistakes, and never wait to be fully prepared, because probably life is over until you get to that point. So thank you, Ivana. Thank you, Darya. Thank you for coming on the Women in Technology Spotlight and sharing your stories. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you for having us. Bye.